Jojo's Bizarre Adventure is a manga series that's been around since the late 80s, published in the Shonen Jump magazine, with this year marking its 35th anniversary. And the reason for it being around for so long is that each story arc has a different main character with a fresh new story to accompany it. There's Jonathan Joestar, Joseph Joestar, Jotaro Kujo, Josuke Higashikata, Jono Giovanna, Jolene Kujo, Johnny Joestar, and Josuke again. And with each one of their stories taking place across different universes and different decades. Like, we literally can go from an Indiana Jones story to a Western story to a Mafia story, and every one of these story arcs having their own villains and side characters that are just weird and yet fascinating, and constantly reinventing itself every single time. Created by Hirohiko Araki, a man influenced by Western culture, so much so that his manga is an embodiment of what Western culture is. And some of these stuff can literally be from musical references and applying those references into his power system to Western movies, to Disney characters, or even a moment of Spider-Man showing up in one panel in the manga, to having actual prominent figures and locations that exist in the real world riddled throughout the pages of the manga itself. And in this video, I'll be touching upon how this manga from the 80s managed to evolve and integrate itself into your life and my life all these years later, without any of us really realizing it, and how it becomes more of an entity of its own and surpassing more than just being a Japanese comic that came out weekly. And to start off, I'll begin with another prominent character that's been around for almost as long as Jojo, this character going by the name Sonic the Hedgehog. I think something that bothers most people, or just basically everyone, is watching anime next to a Jojo fan. And when that said Jojo fan thinks everything they see is a reference to it. Mickey Mouse, a Jojo reference. Jail, a Jojo reference. A horse, a steel ball. A man peeing into a cup, a Jojo reference. Do you see what I mean? One of them, which I think is really cool, is Sonic in this tiny comic strip from the 90s, where Sonic and Knuckles are drawn as these massive pillars that are Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star and Jotaro, the main character of JoJo Part 3, with Sonic cosplaying as Kenshiro, and the only reason we know that is because, well, he says the line, and Knuckles in the next panel dressed as Jotaro, wearing Jotaro's iconic hat and jacket as he points towards us in Jotaro's signature pose, with the title of the comic strip saying, "What if champions were the manliest of anime?" And with that, I just proved that JoJo's isn't really gay. But jokes aside, I really want you to think about this. This was the oh shit moment that I realized, and you're about to realize, just how many people have read this little comic strip all the way back in the 90s, and it isn't until now, all these years later, whether it be this video or other fans or by chance, have found out about JoJo, and that they've always had a tiny fraction of a connection to it. But what makes this even more interesting, more than anything, is that it just doesn't stop there. Hideki Kamiya, creator of Devil May Cry, made a Twitter post implying the fact that one of the enemies' mask design was based off the stone mask which appears in the first story arc, Phantom Blood. And while doing my research of this, like, this was insane. This was the moment I was like, no fucking way, because imagine playing this game for years on end since you were a kid basically, and then you watch this show all these years later, come to find out that the very game you've been playing as a kid was referencing a show that you're watching now. And again, this is the very same mask which gives Dio Brando, the main villain of part 1, his vampire abilities. And if you don't think that's a big deal, well, I'm here to tell you that's a very, very big deal. Cyberpunk 2077's photo mode allows V to pose as the Joestars in their signature poses. Street Fighter literally references a Nazi from JoJo Part 2. Bayonetta's Little Devils are a reference to Guido meets the Sex Pistols from Part 5. Gintama, Mob Psycho, an X-Men series from 1998, which is just Hulk dressing up as the World, which is the name of a ghost that does not appear till the third story arc that can stop time. And the list just goes on with so many other video game series, comics, anime, to even music, which is just mostly Japanese bands referencing Jojo. And I find it to be so amazing how far back the history of Jojo really is, not only in Japan but in other countries before the anime popularized it the way it has. And there's just literally too many to talk about, and I'll leave a description of where you can find these references if any of you are curious what else is out there. Something that's always fascinated me is when someone initially comes across Jojo for the first time, whether it be through the anime, games, or the manga itself. But my personal favorite is when that form is discovered through the ever-growing world of memes. Now I want you to imagine that you're an anime fan. You've seen a lot of anime and you're part of a small anime community online. And for a while, everything seems really normal. But that's until this image pops up as you're scrolling down on your computer and you quickly notice something off about the image. The way they're walking is just in a way that's distorted. They're walking in a way that no human would or should. But what's even scarier is when you start to scroll down further and you notice that the anime you've come to love also starts to mimic this very image with characters that have become almost a part of you. And what you realize is that this image isn't what you thought it was. It was more than that. It was something sinister that shouldn't exist, but it does. And it isn't until you find more and more of these images that start popping up in droves that you begin to realize this isn't a harmless meme, but an invasion of one. This is the end of your casual journey as an anime fan and the start of embracing this brand new anime called Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. This is the thing I see whenever someone sees Jojo for the first time. It's one of confusion about what this series is and intrigue to want to seek out that meaning. And I guess for me, it's so much fun because while I'm very much a die-hard fan, at least I like to think I am, but to the regular person who's just discovered it, to them it's like looking into this weird and frightening creature that you don't fully understand. Something they initially think is microscopic since they've never heard of it, only for it to be a part of a larger, ever-expanding whole. And the perfect videos that capture what I mean are created by two amazing creators, X-Forts and the Chukhung-Meister. X-Forts is a YouTuber whose entire content is mostly dedicated to Jojo, analyzing its story, its roster of characters or world items, and power system. But the video I want to talk about today is a 4-minute meme compilation created by X-Forts, which is called 1 second from every episode of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. And it's a video compilation of the most bizarre and out of context moments from the series. And it's a blast to get through because every moment that X-Forts chose from every part of Jojo out of context is literally how someone sounds when trying to explain any part of the series to anyone. Ridiculous and absurd. I mean, there's moments of characters screaming at each other in what seems to be for no apparent reason, a man licking a cherry in a very sexual way, a doll trying to kill another character, an ape looking at a magazine, a man about to get hit with a truck while a kid is on the road beside him. You get my point. However, this wasn't the only video he created. The sequel to his first video was 2 seconds of every episode of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure, and just by looking at the thumbnail you can imagine it's even more insane than the first video, giving more context to different scenarios that still don't make any sense. And for anyone watching this for the first time, it can be a lot to take in, because literally you can't comprehend anything that's going on, with the video that Chukhung-Meister did proving that statement to be ever more so true, and the name of this video being 1 meme from every episode of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure, and with the idea of the video being similar to that of X-Forts, in which they take moments that are really memeable or have been converted to memes and then compiling all those moments into this one big huge 14-minute compilation meme video of the series. But that's not the only video of Shucks that I wanted to talk about. What I really wanted to talk about was his video series called Jojo's Stop Motion Adventure. Jojo's stop motion adventure is a video series taking some of the best moments of Jojo and its characters and recreating these moments frame by frame, using Jojo action figures, giving it the illusion that they're actually moving, taking battles that any Jojo fan absolutely love and adore and giving it a completely different form, like the final battle of Dio and Jotaro where they fight in the streets of Egypt in part 3, or the legendary beatdown of Giorno Giovanna against Cioccolata that took 7 pages in the manga, to even recreating a bizarre dance scene from part 5 in which the characters torture someone while dancing and listening to early 2000s music. And he goes even further in crafting scenes which already exist in different shows, with each character from Jojo reenacting that same scene from said show. A great example being the video called Who Broke It. Who Broke It is a funny scene from season 3 episode 13 of Parks and Recs called The Fight. And in this scene, Ron Swanson wants to know who broke the coffee pot while all of his peers blame one another and deny that either of them ever broke it. And it's revealed by the end that Ron was the one who broke it out of anger of it burning his hand. Now what Schuckmeister does is recreate that same scene with Bruno and the rest of the gang and syncing the audio from that scene, with the whole gang trying to find out who broke the turtle that carries a key, and in that key is a secret room. And if it sounds funny and stupid, that's because it is. And I think that's really cool that someone can just take stuff that interests them, mix them together to make their own little stories and put them out into the void that is the internet. And just like Shuck, there are countless others who do the same, taking Jojo, making their own explanations of what Jojo is or changing it and creating something new. For example, YouTuber Jellopocalypse's video where he breaks down the entire series and even creating a comedic preview of what part 9 could be. The Gamer Monkeys, where everyone in Jojo is a chibi version of themselves, having an episode where the villains and protagonists of the show have their own Oscars, an episode of a camping trip, to even having their own multiverse episode where the animations of Gamer Monkeys meet their anime counterparts, and even having one of Shuck's videos considered as one of the many universes out there, all while Jotaro deals with Jolene's newfound celebrity lifestyle. And the thing is, it gets even more insane, with YouTuber Braggin God literally creating their own fanfiction following the journey of different Jojo characters going to McDonald's. The song Virtual Insanity literally morphed into one with the main cast of Jojo Part 6. Joe Jenkins playing the main theme of the main Jojo from Part 5, Giorno Giovanna, out in public on a piano. The Jojo pose trend on TikTok, in which people who are fans of the series pose as their favorite characters of the show. An entire chase scene from Heavy Rain was transformed into a chase sequence from the 85th chapter of the 8th part of Jojo. The Jojo lore videos, which take specific stuff that describe different parts of said Jojo part. Fans creating an entire meme where nobody understood how a certain villain's ability works until the anime actually explained it. Fortnite Twitter accounts, one of which are dedicated to posting some of the most cursed images online of Jojo characters. Another one is a fan translation using Google Translate with the title of the series going from Jojo's Bizarre Adventure to Joey's Special Experience, which has a chapter called Disadvantages of Bacon Overdose. The ex-president of the United States became a meme of the president of the United States. The baby meme becoming this cursed image of Jolene Cujo, the main character of part 6. The to be continued meme is literally just the ending to every episode of Jojo part 1 and 2. And just to get something straight for those watching the video, I can definitely sympathize with you guys, because for one, it's a lot to take in and it feels like you've just entered the mind of an insane person. But that's just an understatement in the grand scheme of things, because what I've just showed you this far is just how integrated Jojo is into meme culture. And despite how crazy the series actually is, it's the fandom that can seem more deranged than anything else you'll see in Jojo, and no, I am not kidding. Chapter 189 of JoJo Part 3 Stardust Crusaders is one of the many outlandish chapters within the story, with the characters that appear within its pages being even weirder. Oingo and Boingo are two brothers. You can think of them like Master Blaster from Mad Max 3, where Boingo is Master, the brains of the two, and his brother Oingo being the tall, strong guy whose main usage is mostly physical, like Blaster. Now, the one I really want to focus on is on Boingo and his ability, and the idea behind it being, what if a book were able to foretell the future? But it's not just any book, it's specifically a manga, and within its pages you find something very disturbing. And what you end up finding is a drawing showing the image of a laughing plane while a dead man beside the image having 9/11 on his chest years before 9/11 even happened. Now, Araki in an interview from 2007 has answered this very question, and even to him it was a surprise, with him even wondering why he even drew such a scene and laughing it off as a coincidence, which is pretty much what it is, with Araki also mentioning that around the time of the interview that a predictive scene surrounding Jojo started to rise. Basically, people trying to understand if Araki truly is a time traveler or actually can foretell future events. And if you ask me, I think we'll never actually get a concrete answer to that. But there's something else I want you to pay attention to here in this interview. And the thing I want you to pay attention to is the person interviewing Araki. This person being singer, actress, voice actress, cosplayer, writer, illustrator, YouTuber, animator, Shoko Nakagawa. Or you guys might remember her for her two openings for Gurren Lagann, and to me, Shoko is a perfect representation of a JoJo fan who's maybe a little too passionate for it. When the interview begins, Shoko starts off by JoJo posing and has an energy that's just super energetic, just like the actual series itself. And while at first this comes off as pretty endearing, it quickly becomes a little too much excitement for the series. At times we see her struggling to hold back her excitement from seeing manuscripts, sketches, or just even Araki's art supplies. And sometimes she starts saying things that can be a little too wild. So wild, in fact, that she goes as far to tell Araki she would love to have a baby from Jotaro and for him to actually spit on her, leaving Araki a little shocked and confused at times, which is really funny. But just to make it clear, this is by no means talking down on Shoko, because a lot of this was probably for the sake of making an interesting and fun interview. If anything, I think she's actually a pretty cool person who just happens to like JoJo a lot. I mean, just look no further than the draw-along videos she does on her channel that are all about JoJo. To her, despite injuring herself during one of her concerts trying to pose as a JoJo character, decided to keep on with her performance. To even someone who's actually one of the coolest cosplayers out there for the series. And Shoko clearly is someone who absolutely adores the series in the most above and beyond way imaginable. And I find that pretty amazing at the same time, cause despite how sometimes it can be a little much, there's something sincere about that. And the idea of someone who's completely captivated by a world and its characters, but also just the idea of embracing comics and how these stories can change us. And Shoko isn't the only one. There's plenty of other people who reach that same level of passion for JoJo, and just like Shoko, creating their own cosplays for their favorite characters of the series, and at the same time referencing it with different poses and quotes from the comic. All this dating back all the way back to the early days of the internet. But sometimes that passion and love for it can create a fandom that can be transformed from something beautiful to something uglier and full of toxicity. One example are people thinking that JoJo is the best thing ever and basically shit on everything else. Everything else, which is other things people enjoy, which is just annoying and weird to me. JoJo fans also forcing other people to get into JoJo's and not acknowledging that the series isn't for everyone despite how you want to look at it. These same fans beating it into other people's brains how broken Giorno is. Invading the comment section of every musical reference that Araki chooses for his power system system on YouTube, but nothing never really made me feel so disappointed with the fandom more than what happened recently with manga artist Sho Aimoto. Sho Aimoto has been a fan of Jojo for a very long time, listing it as her favorite manga in 2007, while her favorite Jojo being Jolene, drawing her in a Twitter post all the way back in 2011. And it was announced last year that she was going to be able to write and draw a one-shot involving Jolene, a one-shot which told the story of a forgotten stand user created by Whitesnake, the main villain of part 6, and that stand user being Fujiko, an artist who was put into prison for murder, with her ability Bad Romance to be able to control a person's emotions whenever she gives them a drawing of said person. And as she pours her heart into her art, they pour their hearts into her. And when Jolene has a heart-to-heart moment with Fujiko, she becomes completely obsessed with her, to the point she makes her orgasm while doing yoga, and later drawing Jolene as an angelic figure, allowing her to reach enlightenment. And the thing about this is that this was a fun story. Sure, it was erotic at times, but Sho never went to the point of making it into a hentai. It was pretty tamed. But even if that were the case and I didn't like the erotic parts or it became straight up hentai, I'd never do what the JoJo community did. But I also want you to think about this from Sho's point of view for a second. Think about how you've been a fan of this series for what seems your whole life, and you're now offered the chance to actually draw your own comic with your favorite character in it, with the man himself, Hirohiko Araki, allowing you to do it. In hindsight, it must have been such a great moment for Sho. Being able to draw something you love and having fun creating your own story of that thing so precious to you, it should have been wonderful. And then the one-shot released back in December of last year, and the JoJo community became something I slowly started to despise. A community that up until this point I really enjoyed because it's one of the most creative communities out there. And this was the community that, despite everything that I've said so far about it, fell down even further than what I actually thought it could, and that just filled me with so much disappointment and anger. There were many people attacking Sho for her one-shot, calling her names and even going as far as sending her death threats. And I remember reading that and I just felt sad, because a part of me thinks that a part of Sho regrets creating that one-shot when she shouldn't. She just made something that she loved just like everyone else does in this community. And I just want to tell the JoJo community that we have to be better. Sure, what Sho did was different from what we're used to, but it's not worth getting angry to the point of telling someone mean, horrible things like I saw. But this next section reminds me about the opposite, that there are good people here. People like Sho, like Shoko, who love JoJo just as much and came up with some of the most coolest shit ever made to express that. However, in order to get to understand that, we'll have to dive into the world of fan-made media. And I know this video is pretty long already, but stick around. This part is one of my favorite things ever. Fan-made content has been around since like forever. You've got people recreating certain scenes they like from their favorite movies, shows, or comics, or just making their own interpretations of the many characters they like. And JoJo is no exception, with countless artists creating their own OCs, stories, games, and even replicating Araki's art to the point you really can't tell the difference. But the first thing I want to talk about is a little video game by Odd Pomegranate, Jojo's Bizarre Adventure Requiem. The game itself is a game that's based on the original game Jojo's Bizarre Adventure Heritage for the Future, a side-scroller beat-em-up game that was released in 1999 and basically brought to life the many characters from the third story arc. And Jojo Requiem takes a similar style from that same game, but reinvents it with a larger roster of fighters, compiling a total of 140 characters, with each one with their own unique fighting styles, some which are even ripped straight from the manga. But if you're even a tiny bit more curious of what other fighters are there, then you can just scroll down the list and they get pretty fucking goofy. So goofy in fact that you can play as Ronald McDonald, Homer Simpson, to even Garfield, all of which are playable with their own fighting styles, with an arcade mode, single battle, team battle, and an AI battle system for 75 different stages, every one of them beautifully drawn and recreate various locations in the JoJo universe, from the New York City streets to Cairo, Egypt, the Philadelphia coastline, and my personal favorite, the Bohemian Rhapsody stage, where a deranged man whose power is literally the power of fiction, all the while he's watching you and your opponent fight on top of a comic book, with the actual Bohemian Rhapsody song playing in the background, and it looks and feels fucking awesome. It also surprises me that this isn't a main title JoJo game. It's also better than All-Star Battle, but you didn't hear me say that. Another creator I absolutely love is YouTuber Chandler Spivey, and the idea behind Chandler's videos being to allow us a look into a version of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure where, depending what musical reference a character's stand power is named after, the song would play whenever they appear, giving entire scenes a new way to be enjoyed by fans. And it's ideas from Chandler and Odd Pomegranate that other people created their own fan-made content, like Disco Ballad, who's made their own openings for the 7th part of JoJo. Inspired from what came before, they were able to create openings that not only matched the Western theme for the part, but also matched the openings from previous parts in quality, with vibrant colors, fast transitions, and epic sound effects that made these some of the best openings I've ever seen. Or the countless fan-dubs and motion comics by multiple creators bringing to life future parts, which have yet to be animated, allowing us not only to experience JoJo in its purest form, but also have incredible voice acting and mesmerizing usage of different effects to convey the bizarre and weird nature of JoJo with manga panels. And this meant that apart from the motion comics that people were creating, now we have animators bringing to life their favorite moments from the series in ways we've never seen before, becoming more prominent after the end of Part 5. During the time JoJo Part 5 ended, everyone who was a JoJo fan were more or less craving for new JoJo content, and for an entire 2 years, no one really knew when the 6th part of JoJo was going to be announced or if it ever would. This led many people to seek and read the manga for themselves, just to scratch that itch of wanting to know what happens next. And what many people found was one of the darkest moments to ever happen in JoJo history. What they found was the end. The ending to Part 6 is the end of the long story for what Araki began all the way back when he first created JoJo in '87, and it's in Part 5 where we really start to get the very first sign of that. During Part 3, stands were really simple, and as Araki became more comfortable and created more parts, they've become more complex, where now a person's stand power is able to transform into beings of immense power that can bend reality or leave massive consequences to a universe. And in Part 6, that's exactly what happens when the stand Made in Heaven is born. Made in Heaven, to put it simply, is able to accelerate time, with its user being that of Father Pucci, Part 6's main villain, with his entire goal to be able to reach a version of heaven, and to do that he needs Made in Heaven, who is able to bring the universe to a point of singularity where it all resets, creating a new world. His vision for this new world being people able to achieve happiness through the ability to see the outcomes of what their life will be and accepting it. But what's so tragic about this is the demise of the Joestars at the hands of Pucci, with YouTuber Alan Owls able to recreate this entire sequence, with their animations capturing all the dread and despair the characters feel in their final moments. These same moments recreated by creators Jojo Land and the Dashing Dr. K, which capture what is the end of the universe and the extent of Made in Heaven's abilities. And if you want to see more, you should check all 3 of these artists, and their work is incredible, with Alan also creating a trailer for the 7th part of Jojo, and the Dashing Dr. K's Twitter account where they post concept art of the final portion of part 6, and these look so good that anyone would think that they were official. However, I want to go even deeper with this. At the end of part 6, after all the chaos that happened, the world is reset, with many of the main characters we cared about now leading different lives, and what looks like to be happier than how they used to be starting the story. And I want you to take that in mind for a second. Let's say you take your favorite character, their life being tragic for the most part, only in a different universe they get to live a happier one. Only you, the reader, don't get to see that happier version of themselves, at least not as much as you'd like to. But what if I told you there was a way to see those special moments where you do see your favorite characters happy, and it just doesn't have to be seeing them happy, but also see them in their most vulnerable moments you never got. And that's exactly what artist The Real Snipester does. And if I'm gonna be honest here, it's probably my favorite fan content out there, cause now I get to see Jolene able to have a conversation with her father about why she'd come to resent and hate him for not being there when she actually needed him. The same goes for her to actually also hear why he makes such decisions and why he was never around. And it gets to me whenever I read this, because to see two of my favorite characters come to understand one another and to share their thoughts is something I've always wished Araki would dive a little more into. But because of The Real Snipester, I can see that now. I can see my favorite characters be more human, more relatable than ever before. I can see how Giorno feels after the events of part 5 and trying to work through the idea, what if he could have saved his friends from dying at the hands of Diavolo, with Jotaro helping Giorno to understand that the feeling of guilt will never go away. It'll probably stay with him for the rest of his life, but he can learn to accept that fact and keep moving forward. To something so simple about a man reminiscing about the moments he had with his best friend who tragically passed away. And it's these tiny little stories on someone's Instagram page that remind me that despite how stoic or badass Jojo characters are, they're still human beings who have real problems and struggles to sometimes find the answer to those problems, just like a lot of us do. And thanks to The Real Snipester, it's possible for those moments to exist, with even more artists like EST Cause, in which they draw moments where Jonathan and Dio, the main character and villain of part 1, actually like each other and treat each other as family. Or the idea, what if their roles were reversed, where Jonathan becomes a vampire and villain of the story, while Dio takes Jonathan's path and is the hero of this story. A fan-made opening made during the simpler times of YouTube, where the A Cruel Angel's Thesis and Jojo are mixed together to create the same beat for beat opening of the original Evangelion anime. Only now with the cast of part 6, and watching this video still gets to me, not only because part 6 is really sad, but because this was kind of the pioneer video that started it all, from some person who just wanted to share how they feel about the series. Like, I would never imagine someone would make their OC and create an entire story where their OC marries the main character of part 5, and to them even starting a family. On top of that, their OC has such a cool backstory that it actually became one of my favorites, despite it being fan-made. Or the idea that Marvel covers can make Jojo look even more badass than it already is. Or Instagram pages where Jojo action figures are posing as models or just doing weird stuff in general. To even having one of Araki's characters fucking talking to him. It's just incredible the level of imagination that so many people have because of one story. And that's just it. After everything I've talked about today, this is it. This is what makes Jojo so special. Why so many people around the world have loved and appreciated this saga for 35 years and continue to do so. I've been thinking a lot about what it takes to inspire people for a long time now. And there was a time in high school where I loved to draw, like a lot. And I was never really good at it, but I knew it was something that I enjoyed doing more than anything else. and I still do, because art was always a way to kind of just forget about the world and just bury myself into my imagination. And when that drive to draw ended, I felt like a piece of myself died. There were moments where I was alone with my thoughts, and in order to just deal with those thoughts, I would draw, but that wasn't there anymore. And then something happened when I started watching Jojos. Seeing all these strange characters doing some of the most insane shit I've ever seen, and by the time I was caught up with the anime and picked up the manga, I slowly felt that drive, that inspiration to draw again. And it was all because Jojos is this series that reminded me that your imagination is limitless. It doesn't ever stop. It reminded me why I love comic books in the first place, and that they would always be something special to me. And I would never forget that moment when I picked up the pencil and paper again and just began to draw. All of this because of some guy I don't even know decided to draw his imagination on a piece of paper. Araki said in an interview once that his idea for Jojo was to show how beautiful humanity can be through his story and characters. And to be honest, I think he fucking achieved that. I mean, the proof is here right in this video and out there. And it wasn't just his characters he achieved that with. He showed how beautiful human beings are in the real world. Seeing all these different people come together and just create a variety of different things. Some even achieving their dreams because of a character they love so much taught them to be strong and to never give up. A story that reminds us that we can break the norm and be something more no matter how out there it is than everything else, to take risks whenever there is an opportunity, but most of all, that each one of us have our own adventures to go on. We'll meet people, lose them, we'll experience good and bad things, but in the end, when looking back, those are memories, even the bad ones. And it's because of our ability to have memories is what helps us to keep those moments alive until we're gone. And just like each JoJo, we have to forge our own paths no matter how hard it may seem. Araki is on his way to making JoJo Part 9. And honestly, I believe this to be the last adventure in the series. And I guarantee when it does end, we'll all look back and say that this journey was something special. And the moments that I had with my favorite characters will live on within my memories. So, thank you, Araki. Thanks for giving us JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.